Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Am's Untitled Podcast. I'm Am. Hi, if you've never met me before, it's really nice to meet you. Welcome to my Percy Jackson dedicated podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be continuing with the Lost and they said the last hero book on the Son of Neptune. I'm so sorry. Brain is completely fried from uni, so you will just have to excuse that. Got so many deadlines running around the corner that literally this week, like this upload has not gone up on time for the pure reason that I've been so busy. So I really apologize for that. But you will get an upload by the end of today. Um, this is literally the only spare chance I've had to record this episode. So I've got to do this well, basically, because I don't really have any more time this week. And then hopefully for next week's episode, I'll be a bit more free and it will go up on time. Fingers crossed. Anyway, so today's episode, we're going to be doing part two of the Son of Neptune book. So that's chapters 8 to 14. If you don't know how this works, basically, I just give you a rundown of what happens in each chapter, my thoughts, feelings, and comments on it, any invisible strings that I pick up, any hints to previous books, that sort of thing. And yeah, it's just basically me just sort of semi-analyzing the text with you guys. Major warning, the episode contains spoilers from this book. So please, before you listen in, if you haven't read the book, read the book and then come back to this because I don't want to spoil anything for you. But if you're just here because you want to hear me ramble, because that is all I do on these episodes. Last week's episode was a 47-minute episode. I don't even know how. And when it came to editing this episode, I wanted to bash my head against the keyboard because I do not shut up. And it got to the point where I can't cut anything out because it was just me talking about things and going on a tangent. So I apologize for that in advance if this episode is long. I'll try and keep it as short as possible and I'll be keeping an eye on the time so I'm not rambling. Although I've just realized I've been talking for 2 minutes and it's got nothing to do with what's in the book. So I'm going to get started. So chapter 8 is Jason's point of view. And oh no, sorry, hold on. I'm on the wrong thing. This is not, we're not looking at Jason's point of view. This is the wrong book. I'm so sorry. Got the wrong slide, wrong note. Sorry, I'm back on track now. You're gonna have to excuse that. That was a bit of a brain moment where my brain stopped working. But yeah, let's carry on. So chapter 8 is Hazel's point of view. Now this seems a bit better. So it opens up with Percy and Hazel eating together. Percy asks Nico if they have met before, but Nico denies it. So if you don't know, Nico and Percy know each other from the third book in the original Percy Jackson series. So the reason why Nico is not intervening and telling Percy this is because he's not allowed to meddle with this stuff, and it's almost like one of those things where Nico and Percy kind of hit a bit of a rough patch. So I think there's an element of that Nico is still holding against Percy. Maybe that's why he doesn't want to help him, but also he's been warned by his dad not to interfere. So I can kind of understand why he doesn't want to as well. Dakota tells Percy about how Hazel saved him from a unicorn stampede, and Frank basically hypes her up as a hero, which I think is so cute. Like, one thing you're gonna keep hearing about me is how cute I think Frank and Hazel are. Like, they're one of those couples where it's like they're so sweet and they're like each other's hype man. It's so cute. Obviously, Percy Beth is my ultimate favorite. Like, nothing will ever change that. But I think it was if I was to choose another couple that I love, it would be Frank and Hazel because they are so cute. Um anyway, sorry, went on a bit of a tangent there. Let's carry on what's going on. So Percy asks how Hazel and Nico met and he asks him if he has any other sisters and Nico said he had one but she died. Ooh. Yeah, you could tell Percy's lost his memories. But yeah, if you don't know, Bianca was Nico's sister, and she was killed by a monster. Well, it wasn't even a monster, it was more like a metal giant, and she got crushed basically. It was horrible. Rest in peace, Bianca. She was one of my favorite characters. She was very, very cute. Um, Unfortunately, she didn't make it, and I think that was one of those deaths where I remember reading it like for the first time, and I went like it was like, oh my gosh, Rick, what have you done? And it was so sad, and I'm so happy that Bianca is still like remembered in these books, even though like she's not been a part of the books for a really long time. I love that Rick never allows us to forget good characters, which is great. Nico reveals that Bianca left Elysium to be reborn in another form, so he would never see her again. Oh, that's so sad. I mean, it's an amazing choice that she made there. That's what she wanted, but it's just like the thought of never seeing Bianca again. Like, I think it was hard enough for Nico when she died originally, and like now the thought of never seeing her again is just like That's so sad. I'm sorry, like my heart breaks when I read that because I'm like, that's awful. Anyway, Don the Fawn runs up to them, who smells Percy and knows about his empathy link. Percy is so confused. Oh man, Rick, why? What was the actual need for that? So basically, if you didn't know, in the Sea of Monsters, Grover and Percy created an empathy link so that Percy could save Grover from the Sea of Monsters, from what do you call them? Oh my god, my brain is not working today. Cyclops, yeah. Um, and yeah, since then, like they've had this empathy link to stay in contact with each other and just know when each other is in danger and stuff. And obviously, the thought that Percy's lost his memory and has no idea who Grover is, or this amazing group of people that love and care about him, is so sad. And I swear to God, do you know when I read that? It was like I'd been punched in the gut. I was like, oh, Rick, there was no need for that. And it also shows like how much these books have changed. Like, I think a lot of people misunderstand these books as being children's books. But although I do agree with that, like, they're, especially the first five, are very, like, child friendly, you can say, but they teach you so much, like so many moral lessons and stuff that you learn. And I think that it's just as important for us as adults to read them, because I, like, as I've grown older, like I've read these books, I think about 3 4 times, maybe more than that now. And like every single time I learn something new, and I think that there's something in these books that everyone can learn, which is just down to Rick just being a brilliant author. Like, there's no other explanation for it apart from the fact that he is just fantastic in everything that he does and everything that he writes. So, yeah, I definitely don't think that these books have the same sort of tone as the first five. I think a lot has changed since then, and they're a lot more serious, which I love. They're just a lot more mature, and that's amazing because the audience that originally started with these books have moved on and they've become older and maturer. So that's exactly what books need to do. So I think it's a very wise decision that Rick made there. Nico changes the topic and they discuss their war game strategies. Now, these war games, you know how like in Camp Half Blood, there's like rules that protect you? Let's say in Camp Jupiter, those rules are just completely non-existent, and you'll know you'll understand what I mean in a minute. Percy asks why he's being in the fifth cohort, why being in the fifth cohort is so bad, and Hazel reveals it's because Romans mostly fight on foot, so the cavalry is looked down on. And I just think that that's really stupid. Like, it doesn't really matter what cohort you're in. Like, it should be that if you're talented on the battlefield, like it shouldn't matter where you are as long as you're protecting people, I suppose. But yeah, I remember reading that and being like, that's just awful, isn't it? Like putting somebody in a derogatory cohort, I think is quite bad. Um, and also it's revealed that Frank is looked down on because he's an archer and he hasn't been claimed. Any guesses on who his godly parent might be? Now, with Frank, I didn't really know, if I'm honest, like when I first read the books, because I was a bit like, oh, I'm not sure. Like, he doesn't sound like. I feel like we didn't know enough about him for me to be able to guess whose house he would be in, which is like valid. Like, that, I suppose that's a part of the suspense element of it. And also, like, I don't see what's wrong with being an archer. Yeah, I understand it's probably not as cool as fighting with a sword and shield, but it's more of skill in archery, and I still think that Frank is pretty cool, despite the fact that he's an archer. But that might just be my own personal biases in that. Percy realizes that they lost their eagle. That's why they're being looked down on. So Frank sort of gives him an idea of what is going. He fills him in on the stuff that he doesn't. Frank also tells him about Michael Varus, is it Varus? Who heard the great prophecy and tried to make it about himself. And the fifth cohort attacked, and that's when the eagle disappeared. And Hazel and Frank, along with the other members of the fifth cohort, were dismissed and cursed. So basically, as cursed, not uncursed. Um, this eagle is really, really important to these Roman legions, and the fact that the fifth cohort lost theirs is like a really big deal, and that is why the entire fifth cohort is looked down, which I just think is a bit silly, to be honest. But okay. Frank mentions Jason, who is missing, and Percy reassures them that he is happy to be part of the fifth cohort. Isn't he just the cutest? Like, honestly, like, just when I think that boy can't get any more sweet, like, he does things like that, and I'm just like, oh, he's just so fictional man coded. I think that's what it is. That's why it speaks to me. I'm like, oh, he's just amazing. Raina announces that the games have begun, and Frank tells Percy that they are going to be defeated for the 13th time. Ooh, 13 defeats. That is That's not good. Let's hope they're not defeated. Let's be wishful for all of them. Okay, let's move on to chapter 9, which is Frank's point of view, and it opens up with basically Frank simping over Hazel and wanting to tell her his secret. So Frank has like secret, which will be revealed a little bit later on that we could talk about together. And the fact that he wants to tell Hazel is just so cute. Like I really ship them together. Like I remember reading this book and being like, "Them to have a happy ending because they're so cute." Frank tells him that he left his grandmother's house after his mum died and came to camp. Yeah, so Frank also has a really, really tragic story that we'll talk about. You know how Leo had a really sad story? Frank is also one of those people. But like I said, we have to talk about that a little bit more once we get into his backstory, which comes a little bit later on in the book. So don't worry, we will get there. His grandmother had given him a half burnt piece of firewood, and Frank is basically in awe of Percy. Like he thinks that Percy is like this enigma. Like he knows that there's something truly special about him. And I think Percy is one of those characters who, when they're stood with other characters, like you can feel their power. Um and it's just great. And Percy is so he's a kid that's been through a lot, but he's also the kindest person ever, and there's nothing like he wouldn't do for his friends and family. And I think that that's really what Frank looks up to him for, which is very sweet. And Frank thought that he would be claimed by Apollo on his 16th birthday, but it didn't happen. Oh, that's so sad. Actually, I can see why Frank thought that he was a child of Apollo, because obviously the whole archery skill and that sort of thing. So I can see where he made that connection. But does anybody else have any guesses on who might be his godly parent? I know who his godly parent is, and believe me when I say I was shocked because I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that at all. But yeah, we'll come to that. Don't worry. Vietelius patronizes Frank for being an archer and tells him about how he was claimed a chicken in his underwear. TMI, man, that's nasty. He tells Frank not to lose hope and that he can still be claimed, which is true. Like, I don't think there's like an age limit for when they have to be claimed. I think it's just that some people are claimed faster than others. I think like another factor in it is the fact that the gods have gone really quiet because because of the whole Gaia situation. Like, I don't think that there is in contact with their children as they would like to be. So that's probably why Frank hasn't discovered his godly parent yet. Vietilius questions him about the Gorgon's blood vial, which actually belonged to Percy, but he had taken it from the right side of Gorgon's blood so he could heal any disease and even bring somebody back to life, and that the left was instantly fatal. Now, this Gorgon's blood vial comes in a little bit later in the books. Like, I can't talk about it right now because it's a major spoiler. I think it's for Mark of Athena that it's a major spoiler. Or was it House of Hades? Something like that. So that's going to come back up in the next few books. So we'll talk more closely about that. But that vial is very, very important. So the right side basically heals any disease and is very powerful. It can bring somebody back to life. And the left side of the vial is instantly fatal and can cause a really bad death. That's all you need to know for basically Frank thinks that this vial might break his curse, in other words. But like I said, like Rick doesn't mention his curse for a really long time. So it's one of those things where you just sit there and keep thinking about it until you go like blue in the face because you just want to know so badly, but he won't tell you. Like I said, like it's one of those things where he plants the seeds that he waters later, and this is one of those moments. So we'll come back to that. Um, Vietelius tells Frank he carries the curse of that agronaut. Maybe I've spelled that wrong. I feel like I spelled it wrong. And Vietilius tells Frank that the vial could have saved Percy's memories, so he feels bad. Yeah, so this vial is extremely important. And like I said, it's very powerful. So it's powerful enough to give Percy his memories back. But at the same time, Frank thinks that it could cure him. So now he feels bad for even thinking that he should use the vial when Percy needs it to become himself again and to become whole. Which, oh, he's so sweet, isn't he? We love Frank. He's so cute. Vietilius tells him that they are going to need the blood on their quest. Quest. Quest, guys. Major, major hint there. And Raina tells him to go and get Percy. Percy asks Frank how the Greek gods became Roman gods, and they did it for power, basically. Um, yeah, that's just something that you have to read the books for me to explain. Like, even to be honest, for me, I was just like, that is so silly that they've done that. But okay. Um, Percy knows that Frank kept the vials and thanks him for it. Frank tells him that he can get his own memories back if he takes it, but Percy refuses. He's so noble. Like, he's one of those people that's always very giving. Like, he doesn't want anyone to have to sacrifice anything for him. And if he feels like Frank needs the vial more than he does, he will happily give it up, which I think is so cute. I love him so much. Um, Percy tells Frank that he remembers his girlfriend, but she isn't at this camp. Oh my god, he can remember Annabeth. That is so cute. Like, the fact that his memories have been taken away, but the one thing he can remember is Annabeth. Like, how can anyone just not love them? They are just so cute. They are so cute. I cannot. I genuinely cannot. Frank tells Percy about how his mother died in battle, and the chapter ends with Percy asking him to take him to the Roman baths, and that's where the chapter ends. Chapter 10, again, Frank's point of view, and it opens up with him remembering his mother's funeral and his grandma giving him grief. Yeah, Frank's grandmother is a very, very complicated woman. She's quite cruel, and like I said, we'll talk more about her when it comes to Frank's um backstory. But yeah, she's a bit of a bitch. Oh, excuse my language. But yeah, we'll talk more about that. His grandma shows him a mahogany box that his mother wanted him to have, and his grandma wanted to send him away to protect him. Protect him for what, you might wonder? I can't tell you. Yeah, sorry, we were talking about Frank's grandmother, weren't we? Yeah. So, inside this box that she's given him, he found a stick, and his grandmother tells him that his father is a Roman god and that he needs to go to Camp Jupiter. So, basically, Rick is sort of setting the scene about what you semi need to know for now, and then something that he could tell you a little bit later on, basically. And a goddess appeared in the fire after Frank was born, telling his family that Frank is special with his mother's and father's abilities. Very important, mothers and fathers. Remember both those things because they are integral to his backstory. But again, go back to that. The fates had decreed that although he would be the strongest, he would be the most vulnerable and die. Ugh, it's a bit horrible to say to someone, eh? As soon as they've been born, oh, you'll be the strongest, but you're really vulnerable and you can die at any second. That's kind of it's kind of harsh, to be honest. And if the stick he has burns, Frank will die basically. So this stick is basically Frank's lifeline. Um, and if something happens to this stick, Frank is going to die. In other words, and there's nothing no one can do about it. His mother went to Afghanistan to find his dad, but unfortunately she died. Oh, bless her. You know what? He's such a sad backstory. Like, I just want to genuinely give him a hug. Like, that's all I could think about. I just want him to be, just want him to be happy and have a hug. That's all. Lupa would come to escort him to camp after the funeral, and once he had reached camp, he spoke to Raina and she let him join camp. Percy and Hazel so are eventually discussing the war games, where he realizes it's similar to Capture the Flag. Oh, I don't think so, my dear. Capture the Flag is a lot less intense with rules. This is very intense with no rules, so you can imagine it's literally a recipe for a disaster. But yeah, we'll come to the games in the next chapter, I think. They put on their armor, ready for the games, and Dakota and Gwen come with a plan. They tell Percy, Hazel, and Frank to do whatever. I'm sorry, but what the hell kind of plan is that? Like, genuinely, I was sitting there, and the only thing that was going through my mind was this is why they've lost nearly 13 times because they genuinely don't have a plan. And with Capture the Flag, there's always a plan. Like, particularly with Annabeth, like, the only way she can function in Capture the Flag is if she has a plan. That's how she wins. And the fact that these guys play without plan is actually crazy. Like, I could not. Like, I'm very type A in that sense. Like, I have to have a plan. And hearing that people go into things without a plan is just like alien to me. Frank tells Percy to control the water cannons, and he is just unsure. Basically, he has no recollection of his powers, so he doesn't know what he is and isn't capable of. And that's very dangerous. Like, he doesn't realize how powerful he actually is. And the chapter closes with Frank telling Hazel to navigate through the tunnels while he does the rest. So Frank semi has a plan, but like I said, we're going to come to the games in this chapter. Oh my gosh. Chapter 11 is Frank's point of view again, and it opens up with Hazel finding the tunnels. Percy uses Riptide to see through the tunnel while Frank checks on the stick. So if you didn't know, celestial bronze, which is what Percy's sword's made of, glows in the dark. So they're underground, so he'll be able to see basically. Frank trips on something silver, and Hazel tells him not to touch it. So again, this is her curse coming to the surface. So yeah, don't touch anything that appears after Hazel has done it. They continue running through the tunnels, and Frank climbs up the rope and tells the fifth cohort to attack, and Percy joins them in battle. They charge as a team to the enemy base, and that's where the chapter finishes. So yeah, it's a very short and sweet chapter, but it's quite good actually. It shows like this trio dynamic. So of course, like in the first five books, it's Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. Like they're the main trio. But in this story, it's Frank, Hazel, and Percy, which is they're actually a really interesting combination. So we'll talk more about that when I get there. So chapter 12, Frank's point of view again, and it opens up on the battlefield with Percy fighting like an absolute maniac. Yeah, he's just an amazing swordsman, really. And I'm glad that he hasn't lost that ability, even though he's lost his memories. So it's like almost like there's still an element of him that's still there. Frank is admiring Hazel while she jumps on Hannibal's back. Cute, really, really cute. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's not time for that. Like, they're literally in the middle of a war. It's crazy. After Frank and Percy disarm the enemies, they join Hazel. Raina announces that the game has been won. Gwen is seriously injured and gets carried in on a stretcher, and Raina says whoever did it would be punished. So, if you didn't know, Gwen was impaled with a spear through her chest. Oh, like I said, these games are a lot more aggressive and they're very violent. And the way that Rick describes them, I was like, whoa. Like it was a lot for me because I don't normally read stuff like that. Like now that I'm reading like Sarah J. Maas's work, like Throne of Glass and The Assassin's Blade and like The Court of Thorn and Roses, like I'm a little bit more comfortable reading it. So it's not that level of violent, but it's still a little bit violent for me. I'm not gonna lie. Frank thinks that he can help her by pulling out the spear, and the wound starts to heal by itself, basically. So again, showing that Frank is really special. But who's his godly parent, guys? I don't know. I don't know. Well, I do know. I just can't tell you right now. They realize that someone has brought Gwen back from the dead. Ooh, now that is interesting. That is very, very interesting. And I'm so happy I wrote that down. They all hear a voice that says, "Death loses its hold. This is only the beginning." Percy recognizes the voice. Frank feels drawn to it. Now, that line, that quote, is particularly interesting. Death loses its hold. So let's just think about that quote for a second. So we know from Nico that Hades is struggling to keep the dead in check because people are not, they're like monsters and stuff, they die, but they come back straight away and they can't work out what's going on. And the words, "this is only the beginning," the word only shows that things are about to get a lot worse than it already has. Like, if it's not bad enough that monsters are dying and coming back, they are going to find themselves in a situation that's a hell of a lot worse. And these quotes, the way they are written, just Rick is just, oh, so good. Just so good at writing quotes. It's amazing. Ares appears and everyone bows down, but Percy remembers that he's fought him before. Again, big moment. He fought him at the beginning of at the end of the Lightning Thief book, so right at the beginning of the book series, and yeah, they don't get along very well. Let's just say Frank begs Percy to kneel, and eventually he does. Obviously, I'm pretty sure he did that. Definitely not wanting to. He has come with a message, and that they have to release Thanatos from the giants so the dead can go back to being dead. Mars, which is Ares in Roman form, I couldn't think of the word for a second, orders that a quest will go on to a land beyond the gods to find Thanatos. So Thanatos works in the underworld, basically. Octavian asks Mars for the prophecy. He just writes down instructions. Brilliant. That's not really helpful, but yeah, sure. I'm sure they couldn't create prophecy out of that. Mars calls on Frank to come forward. Now, this is very, very interesting. At this point, this is when alarm bells start ringing in your head, and you're like, why has he asked him to come forward? Like, that's literally what was going through my mind. I was like, I wonder why he's chosen Frank. Mars reveals that he is Frank's father and gives him M16, which turns into a spear. He says that he needs to learn how to use his mother's abilities and that he will be the one to lead the quest. Wow, that is a huge responsibility. a minute ago, Frank was worrying about who his dad was. His dad has just shown up, told him that he needs to learn to use his mom's abilities and lead a quest. Like, that's a lot for anyone. And it's in front of the whole camp as well, which is even worse. But yeah, we'll see how he gets along. Mars says that Percy has to be one of his questmates and he disappears. Rain announces him as claimed, but Frank feels like he has been given a death sentence. Honestly, I feel so sorry for him. I was like, can you imagine? You've just met your dad. You've been waiting all these years to meet him. He's revealed himself to you, but also given you a quest that could mean that you could die, which is slightly concerning. But yeah, that's where the chapter ends. Chapter 13, so the second to last chapter that we're going to be talking about in this episode, is Percy's point of view, and it opens up with Percy dreaming about Grover, but he doesn't recognize him. Grover tells him that they are coming to find him, but they can't work out where he is, and Tyson is more likely to reach first. Oh, that's so sad. That literally breaks my heart. Like the fact that he can't remember Grover, he can't remember Tyson, who's his brother. Like that's crazy. And they can't find him because, of course, like the Roman camps and the Greek camps are cut off from each other, so they have no sort of connection whatsoever, which I think is quite cool. But yeah, we'll see if that changes. Um, I don't know. We'll come we'll come to that soon. Annabeth appears asking him if he is all right. Percy can't believe his eyes, and Annabeth tells him to stay where he is. Oh, my person Beth. Oh, I feel like you know what? The amount of punches that I've gotten, like not physical punches, but emotional punches that I've got from reading these books is actually crazy. Like one day, I feel like I need to send Rick my therapy bill for what he's done to me with this whole Percabeth thing because they had just got there happily ever after. Like I was just happy that they were finally together, and now they've been split up again, and I was like, oh, like just when I think it can't get any worse, it does. But yeah, sorry. Percabeth Hart, Rick, I forgive you because you're such a phenomenal author, but there's no need for that. No need for that. His dream shifts to the fields of Mars where he sees Gaia who's trying to tempt him into joining her. So basically she's prying on Percy because she knows how powerful he is. Then the dream shifts to um, Percy into a principal where a giant tells him he awaits him atop on top, I'm assuming that's supposed to say, I've spelt it wrong, on top of the ice, and Percy wakes up. So who is this giant? I don't know, but Percy has been summoned, you could say, to meet him. So we'll come to that. Frank tells him that this is where the Senate meeting is, and he reveals that Hazel is the other questmate. Shocker! Of course she is. Net sarcasm. We knew that he'd pick Hazel over anyone else, which is quite cute. They all head down for breakfast. Raina and Octavian lead the why can I not talk today? Lead the procession of senators. Do you know what? I really hate Octavian. Like I've always hated him as a character, and like anytime he comes up, I'm just like, oh, I don't really want to say that. But he is really important to the story, so I can't necessarily leave him out. Um, they head towards the Pomerian line and they meet Terminus, god of boundaries, and a little girl called Julia. Yeah, Terminus is a lot more funny. Like again, you see more of him like as the books progress, and Julia's also really sweet as well. Percy reluctantly hands over Riptide because weapons aren't allowed in the city limits. Hazel drags Percy away from Terminus and they approach the Forum, a place where demigods and descendants of demigods come to live their lives. And there's a little Percabeth moment here, which is really cute. And this is all basically in Percy's imagination, but the quote is he imagined holding hands with Annabeth at a cafe, maybe when they were old, watching their own kid chase seagulls across the Forum. Oh, that hurts my heart. I'm trying to explain how much that hurts me right now. He's so, so cute. I love that even though like his memories are really vivid, like he still wants that with Annabeth. Like he wants a family with her. It's so cute. You know what? One day I want Rick to write a book. Like when he's done writing Percy Jackson, which I hope is not anytime soon. Like I want him to write a book on Percabeth once they have children and they get to live in a happy world where their children are safe and stuff and they get to take their kids to camp. Like I would love that. Like I would cry, but I would love it because I think it's so cute. Oh. And I love that he still has hope for this future with Annabeth. Like even though like they're in an even worse situation than they were with the Titans, I feel like he's holding on to this hope that things are gonna get better, which is amazing. And I feel like Percabeth is going to be the end of me. Like one day, like when that book comes out eventually, I'm going to be sobbing. Like I'm going to be an actual mess. So Rick, please don't do it anytime soon. And the chapter ends with Percy knowing that they have to win, or there will be no futures for any demigods. And he pauses in front of a building, then follows Frank and Hazel inside. So, chapter 14, which is the last chapter we're going to be talking about in this episode, opens inside the Senate House, and they all sit down. Raina starts the meeting. The fifth cohort and everyone else are fighting over the quest. They don't think that Frank, Hazel, and Percy should go on the quest. So obviously, Frank and Hazel have already got um like they've already been put at a disadvantage because they're in the fifth cohort. Obviously, people look at them as curses, and of course, Percy's like a new person to camp, like they don't know anything about him. So I think they're a lot more hesitant to send them on such an important quest, which I understand. But then at the same time, like the gods have picked them themselves, so it's almost like you can't really argue with that, if I'm honest. But yeah, so this whole argument is just illogical to me. But okay, I suppose I understand why they're worried, but at the same time, like I also feel like Frank and Hazel are literally the only people who would be best suited to dealing with a situation like this. Octavian gives Frank the mural crown for being the first over the walls in the siege warfare, and gets promoted to the rank of Centurion and is made the leader of the quest. So, in other words, Octavian's just kind of pushed Frank into a higher rank, so people are more open about him going on the quest, basically. I suppose it's probably one of the only good things Octavian does in these books. It is revealed that there was an opening in the rank because Gran was retiring to go to college. I'm not surprised, to be honest. After what she's been through, like being impaled in the chest with a spear and then being brought back to life, I feel like that kind of takes a toll on anyone, and she probably just wants to go to college because it's a lot more normal. Like that kind of stress is more easier to deal with than coming back to life, I suppose. So I don't blame her, but she's also a good character. Raina decides that the place her and Frank. Hold on. Yeah, so Raina decides to place her with Frank and he accepts the position. Thank God. Okay, that's quite. Sorry, I don't know what I just read there. I clearly can't read my own notes very well. Hazel pins the badge on him. Oh, that's so cute. Like it's like a little proud girlfriend moment. I mean friend. She's not his girlfriend yet. We'll see. I'm so happy you guys can not see my side eye right now because I'm like a shipper. It's great. Hazel says that they must go to Alaska, the land beyond the which is the land beyond the gods, which everyone knows is cursed, which is already like a massive like red flag for going anywhere. Like, oh, it's massively cursed. You know what? Let's just go there. That's not really the best idea if you ask me, but yeah, sure. Hazel says that she has a good idea where to find the giant Alcyonius. I think that's how you say his name, because Hades has taught them. So if you didn't know, Hazel is a child of Hades as well. So yeah, they have like this unique connection with what's going on, which also makes her a good suit for the quest because she knows what she's looking for. Nico says that the war can only be won by the gods and demigods working together. They are panicking because they think the quest is doomed, but Raina tries to calm them down. And Nico is right, like, just the gods on their own cannot defeat what's going on, and just the demigods on their own can't defeat Gaia. They need to work as a team, but it's about getting them all on the same page since the gods have cut themselves off from their children. So as these books go along, like when we talk about this, we were talking more about how to make these two worlds that are supposed to be apart from each other come together, and we'll see if that happens in the books or not. They realize that Gaia is currently controlling which souls live and die, which is why she keeps bringing the monsters back to life so that the demigods are distracted with defeating them, the gods are distracted with defeating those so that she can move in. It's a very clever plan, to be honest. I can't really knock her for the plan, but if she's in control of that and Hades no longer has control, like that means the underworld is going to be an absolute mess. I honestly feel sorry for him. Hades is not a favorite character of mine, I'll be honest, but I do feel bad for him. The trio's plan is to get to Alaska and basically improvise. Can I just say what we're all thinking with how bad of an idea this is? This is where you need someone like Annabeth who makes a plan. The point is, you've got three people that don't know how to make a plan, and you send them on a quest. Like, you just know that something isn't going to work out well. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. We'll talk more about their quest soon enough. That will be more in the next episode, I think. Percy asks them for a vote. Raina hosts a vote with the senators that will be that they if they can be given a vote or not. And but no, nobody else really votes for the trio. and there's no other aid to help them. So whether they fail or succeed is up to them, which I just think is quite harsh. Like, I'm sorry, like Raina is one of those characters I don't like. Like, even as I read these books again, and there's parts in future books where she's a bit better, but even then, like, she's not one of those characters that's really grown on me. So I just think that she's just unnecessarily harsh, and there's no reason for it. But you know, we'll see what she whether she redeems herself or not, I suppose. And you guys let me know your opinions on her, because I'm not the biggest fan of her, to be honest. Percy decides to go on the crest with Frank, and the chapter closes with Octavian saying to Raina that he wants to speak to Percy privately. Uh-oh. That's already a recipe for disaster, but I guess we'll learn more about that in the next episode. So to kind of conclude this episode, let's wrap up with my final thoughts and feelings. Like I said, Frank and Hazel are so cute. Like, I genuinely want them to be together. We will see if that happens in this book or not. The war games are definitely a lot more violent and a lot more aggressive than Capture the Flag. And the fact that Gwen nearly died really scared me. I was like, oh, I would not want to be in that camp at all. Frank, Hazel, and Percy make an amazing team. I mean, after nearly 13 defeats, I suppose winning one is quite good, and they definitely deserve that win. Ares, I mean Mars is back, so Percy is remembering things, and I bet the rest of the Romans thought that he was crazy for arguing Mars. Like, I just think about it, like, just these other demigods who don't know Percy well, like, he's got a bit of a mouth when it comes to gods, and he's like willing to stand up to them. So I can imagine what the other demigods must think, that he's an actual psychopath that has a death wish, which I think is so funny. Frank getting claimed finally, poor guy. He was wondering whether he had a dad or not, which is quite cute, by Mars. And he wasn't expecting it, and I think that's a really good plot twist. Like, I had no idea that Ares would be Frank's dad. Like, genuinely, I thought he was a child of someone else, but obviously I was wrong. Percy dreaming of Grover and Annabeth, that empathy link that still works. I think that's so cute, and I really want them to be reunited so bad. And I'm itching to see who finds for them first. So, like Grover said, it could potentially be Tyson, but we'll see as the story goes on. And I love that sneaky little Percy-Beth moment that Rick put in there. And like, he shows so much about how strong their love is, and that Percy might forget anything, but he could never forget Annabeth. And Rick, that just makes me love you so much. Like, I'm so unromantic, but when it comes to Percy and Annabeth, I don't know. They make me all soft inside, and I'm just like, I just want them to be together forever. And I hope that they get that chance. And Frank finally getting his medals, he deserves it. There is no one who deserves that more than him, and I just adore him so much. He's such a cute character. And finally, I'm so happy that Percy decided to go on that quest. I love that he always does what's morally right. Like, he's never selfish, and that's probably one of the reasons why I love him so much. And I will continue to love him for the rest of my life. I don't think there's anything that could ever change how I feel about Percy about that. So, like, I've just realized I've been talking for like 38 minutes. That's crazy. It's just so much to comment on. Like, I find it really hard to summarize things down. So, thank you if you're still here. I don't mean to ramble. I promise. I promise I'd try and keep this short and sweet, but it didn't really work. So, I apologize for that in advance. But thank you so much for listening in. I really appreciate it. Episodes are available to stream on Spotify and on my YouTube channel. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel whilst you're there. It'd be greatly appreciated. Follow me on Spotify to be the first to know when a new episode goes up. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Threads. I'm more active on Threads than I am on Instagram. Feel free to DM me any questions, any content recommendations. I love hearing from you guys. And I'll be speaking to you very soon. Also, I'm very sorry that this episode is slightly late. I apologize for that in advance. I'll try and make it up to you guys next week. But if I can't, it is just because uni is destroying me. And I've only got like a few weeks left until I'm finished. So uploads will be a lot more regular and on time. So you have that to look forward to. Anyway, have a great week, guys. I love you so much. Mwah. Bye.